Was a broom blossom really the key to an empire? Seriously. Let's dive into the messy, glorious, utterly bonkers world of the Plantagenets. Forget everything you think you know about kings and queens. These guys were basically medieval reality TV, except with way more bloodshed and significantly less rose. It all started with Geoffrey, a dude who never actually went to England. He was a Norman bastard born in France, and his family was obsessed with getting their hands on the English throne. The whole thing was a tangled web of marriages, betrayals, and a whole lot of shouting. The Plantagenets' claim rested on a sprig of yellow broom. Yeah, you read that right, a symbol Geoffrey proudly wore in his hat. It was a desperate, almost comical strategy to stake a claim, but it worked, and then bam. Henry II, Geoffrey's son, inherited the crown in 1154. Suddenly, England had a Plantagenet king and things were about to get wild. Henry wasn't your typical regal type. He was a brilliant strategist, a ruthless lawyer, and a total control freak. He immediately set about consolidating his power, crushing rebellions, and systematically dismantling the old Norman aristocracy. He wasn't messing around. He built castles like they were going out of style, massive, imposing structures designed to intimidate anyone who dared to question his authority. Think of it as medieval Instagram, but with more arrow slits. And he wasn't just building castles, he was rewriting the laws, establishing a centralized government, and basically laying the groundwork for England as we know it. But the real drama began with the royal family. Henry II had a lot of kids, and they were not happy with each other. Imagine a family reunion hosted by a pack of wolves. That's pretty much the Plantagenet household. There were constant power struggles, secret alliances, and enough backstabbing to fill a Shakespearean play. Henry's sons, Richard, Geoffrey, and John, were particularly vicious rivals, and they spent most of their time plotting against each other. Richard in particular was a legend, a fearless warrior, a brilliant strategist, and a complete lunatic. He was obsessed with adventure, spending years fighting in the Holy Land and earning a reputation as the Lionheart. He was also incredibly arrogant and impulsive, which, unsurprisingly, led to some seriously bad decisions. Then there was John, Henry's youngest son. Let's be honest, John was a disaster. He was weak, indecisive, and utterly terrified of his brothers. He signed the Magna Carta in 1215, a document that limited the king's power and established the principle of rule of law, but he immediately tried to get it annulled. He was basically a royal toddler throwing a tantrum and demanding his way. The barons, understandably fed up with his incompetence, rebelled, and John was forced to concede. It was a messy, chaotic affair, but it was a pivotal moment in English history. The 13th century was a whirlwind of wars, rebellions, and royal scandals. Richard I, the Lionheart, was captured in France and spent years in captivity, demanding a massive ransom to be released. John, meanwhile, was embroiled in a series of conflicts with Scotland and France, and his reign was marked by tyranny, corruption, and widespread discontent. The country was basically on the verge of collapse. But the Plantagenets weren't just about conflict and chaos, they were also patrons of the arts and learning. They built magnificent cathedrals, commissioned beautiful works of art, and fostered a vibrant intellectual culture. They were obsessed with chivalry, tournaments, and courtly love, a world of elaborate rituals, dazzling displays of wealth, and passionate and often violent romance. And let's not forget the women. Eleanor of Aquitaine, Henry II's first wife, was a force of nature, a shrewd politician, a passionate supporter of the arts, and a notorious troublemaker. She ruled as regent while Henry was away fighting in the Crusades and played a key role in shaping the Plantagenet dynasty. Her daughters, including Blanchos of Castile and Isabella of France, were married off to powerful European rulers, forging alliances and shaping the political landscape of Europe. The late 13th and early 14th centuries were a particularly turbulent time for the Plantagenets. The Black Death ravaged Europe, wiping out a huge percentage of the population. The country was plunged into civil war, with rival factions vying for the throne. Richard II, a young and idealistic king, tried to reform the government and curb the power of the barons, but he alienated many of his supporters and was eventually overthrown and imprisoned. The final Plantagenet king, Richard II, was a tragic figure. He was a talented poet and musician, but he was also arrogant, insecure, and utterly out of touch with the realities of power. He made a series of disastrous decisions that led to his downfall, and his reign ended in chaos and bloodshed. And then, just like that, the Plantagenet dynasty came to an end. Henry Bolingbroke, John's nephew, seized the throne and ushered in a new era of English history. But the legacy of the Plantagenets lived on in the laws, the institutions, and the myths that shaped England. So what's the takeaway? The Plantagenets were a complicated, contradictory, and utterly fascinating bunch. They were ruthless warriors, brilliant lawyers, passionate lovers, and terrible rulers. They were prone to violence, intrigue, and scandal, but they were also responsible for some of the most important developments in English history. They were, in short, a royal mess, and that's precisely what made them so compelling. Did a family obsessed with a broom really build an empire?